Hello, everyone, and welcome to another small screen Star Wars. As always, I am Julian and Rachel. I'm joined by Rachel Wilkinson.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking about The Bad Batch, Season 1, Episode 7, Battle Scars today. And if you're new to the show, we're just going to be recapping it, kind of scene by scene, talking about what worked, didn't work, doing some story speculation, and, of course, full spoilers. So if you haven't seen the episode, come back, go watch the episode, come back, and we'll talk about it then. Okay. Couple other things I want to touch on. If you haven't done so already, please follow us on Twitter at TowerBabbleCast, because that's where I announced that we were going to be a day late, because we're recording this a day late again. And if you're ever wondering, oh man, where's the show? The best place to find out those updates is on Twitter at TowerBabbleCast, as well as on Facebook, facebook.com/TowerBabbleCast as well. What else? We are coming into the summer season, so weekends might be a little bit tough, so we might move to Mondays. It's hard to say, but again, just follow around on Twitter, and you'll get the updates. All right, let's jump into this. There's lots to cover, actually. I think this is a very strong episode. It's a very strong episode, and I'm really excited to talk about it. Let's just quickly touch on the title, Battle Scars. I think a great title. Often they're really on the nose. This one's, I guess, up there with being right on the nose, and considering that Rex's scar is still fresh. I don't know if you noticed that in this episode. The cut on the side of his head is still bright red. Yep. So that's obviously like the surface level one, right?
Yeah.
But then you can get more complex than that. We start talking about things like obviously he's a Gen 1. We talked about this in the episode, and he went through the whole war. He survived the whole war. There's got to be there's physical scars and emotional scars there. And I think that applies to, by the way, to Omega as well. And Omega is going to get some battle scars today in what happens with her and Wrecker. So any thoughts on the title?
Yeah, I had thought I had to do with that for sure, because they've all been through a lot, especially everything Rex has just gone through, and then obviously the rest of the episode, and then they're all pretty much going to leave today with a brand new matching scar, except her, but because they're cutting their chips out. So
right, totally. So hold on, I have to fix something here. 1 second, really quick. There we go. All right, now we can continue. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. This is going to be. I think this is just such a good episode. I don't know if did it make you cry, because I definitely cried. I didn't cry. I teared up. Oh, okay.
Usually I'm the one who cries. So
usually. But hey, here's something that I actually did learn in my research for the episode. You know that the ship actually does have a name?
Does it really?
Yeah, it does, but it's a bad name, I think.
Is it just a bunch of numbers?
It's wordy. No, it's called the Havoc Marauder, which is a cool name. It's a cool name. Let me back up.
I like
it's a cool name. But it doesn't really first of all, I won't acknowledge that name as an existence until it's actually said on the show, which has never been said.
Yeah, where did you find that? How did you know?
That was on Wikipedia.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Wait, did somebody on Wikipedia just name it that, or?
No, I don't know. I looked through it. I'm like, it's got a name. I'm looking through it, and it's never been referenced by that in the actual show. So maybe it's like a behind the scenes thing or something else. I don't know, but it doesn't matter. It has that name, and we're just not going to refer to that. I personally am not going to refer to it as that until, like I said, until one of the characters on the show actually calls it that. Okay.
Yeah.
Although here's the thing that's I think a point against it being called the Havoc Marauder. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The Lego set does not call it that. So there's a Lego set of this ship, and it doesn't call it that.
What does it call it?
It's just Bad Batch ship or something like that.
Oh,
so
okay.
So I'm just saying, maybe Star Wars is like, maybe we don't want this Havoc Marauder thing being the ship for this Bad Batch. Maybe we'll change the name at some point. So who knows?
Maybe they get a new ship.
Well, that's what's going to happen. That's what I mean, I wouldn't be surprised.
I feel like eventually they're going to need one that doesn't look like a military ship.
Probably. Yeah. Or more likely they'll end up having it. This one will be so damaged that they'll need to replace it with something bigger. Especially as Omega gets bigger, she's going to need more space,
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Very true.
but ultimately, this is just something that we've been tracking for a long time because I've been looking for something better to call it than just the ship. And although like I said, the Havoc Marauder is cool, it doesn't have like a quick like the Falcon, like you'd call it the Marauder, or the Havoc, but like none of that really. I don't know. It doesn't work for me yet. It'll have to grow on me. Is what I'm getting at. Okay. So the episode starts, and we start in media res. And in the middle of an attack, they're on the ship and they're under fire. We haven't seen this a lot, which is space combat. There hasn't been much of that in the show, and they're under attack by a handful of like small fighters. And I really enjoy this scene because it's really quick but really fun and really classic Star Wars because there's a lot of like chatter between the people. You've got Hunter on the guns, yelling at the people up in the cockpit, and it's just very much like Han and Luke on the Falcon, right?
It's the typical one person's yelling at the pilot's yelling at the gunner, like everyone's chaos ensues,
right? Like if we could get the ship going, it's like, well, maybe if you could hit somebody, something like along those lines, right?
Always.
So I just think that works. That's really fun. So through this chatter, Tech is complaining that Echo can't get the hyperdrive back online. And then we see that Wrecker and Omega are dealing with some sort of like lizard creature in the back. And it's just like, again, this just pure chaos, but a lot of fun. And we find out that they're being chased by the Rokai. Now, they are completely new to Star Wars. This is we
didn't even get to see what they looked like.
We have no idea. They called on the Wikipedia called them the Rokai Gang. I don't know where they got that extra like word from, other than the fact that I guess it's underworld stuff. I don't know. But what I'm saying is, we often complain, I often complain that
very important correction.
Yeah, that is important. That I often complain that Star Wars doesn't do enough work to expand the universe. It's always like, it's always the same shit. We always see the same crap all the time, right?
Yeah.
But then we get stuff like this where it's like they just throw out the Rokai, or like there's been a couple times this season where they've introduced like new things that are completely new. And then I go like, oh, there's nothing there, which is lame from the like recap perspective because there's not much to talk about. But in like 5 years from now or 10 years from now, we can all look back and when there's some big arc and Clone Wars season 19 or something where they have to deal with the Rokai, and we'll be like, oh, they were first mentioned in Bad Batch. That's where that kind of the long tail comes with this kind of stuff. So.
Yeah, exactly. So no, I thought it was cool. I liked the little lizard creature too. He looked like a little space armadillo. I was very happy about it. I don't know what it's called, but I enjoyed whatever that was. I would like to see more of it.
Well, they didn't give it a name. Oh, actually, no. Omega gives it a name.
Yeah, it had a name. Like, was it like Omega... Rosie or something?
Yeah, something like that. Now. But it doesn't have like an actual like species name. We don't know what it is yet.
But it let out a really like cute kind of like yow, like yelp, and I was like, okay, I like that. Whatever it is, it's adorable.
It reminds you of R2 going wow.
Basically, yeah. Star Wars always gets me with like the adorable little space creatures. It's my favorite part. I'm like, ooh, another like thing, another cute little hybrid
another mouse
animal
droid.
Mix. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I see that. So we get back to Sid's. We cut back. They jump to hyperspace. They return to Sid's, and the squad is delivering the lizard to Sid. And Hunter asks about like, what does her client want the creature for? And she's like, I don't know. I don't care as long as I get paid. She's like, she says something about like maybe they want to make it into a stew or whatever. Maybe put some damper on your like.
Yeah, you're like, oh. Upset me.
Yeah. So Sid, I think, takes an interesting turn this episode. We'll get to it in just a second. But I like that Hunter asks about what the creature's being used for, because that was something that they didn't do on their last mission before they took the mission.
Yes.
Although it's a little late to ask.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe ask before you give it to her and deliver it.
Right?
Yeah. He's getting there. He's
learning. He's learning, right? And as they head back into the back to discuss payment, Hunter and Echo ask, what is it? Hunter and Omega ask Hunter if they can go. Apparently, they have started a new tradition where they get a snack called Mantel Mix, which looks a lot like caramel corn.
Yeah, it's like that mix of like, what's the, that really crappy popcorn you get at the circus where it's like pink? Like some of it's
like
pink and
candy
some of it's
corn.
white. Yeah, it's like no, candy corn's that gross American candy.
Oh, are you thinking like the stuff that looks like a corn? I'm thinking of like candy corn, which is like popcorn candy.
Oh, okay, yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
no, fair enough. But yeah, it's like that mix of
gross
like caramel
American
corn,
candy.
or there's that really good kind, like the Chicago mix, where it's cheese
Yeah, so I
and
think it's
caramel.
probably
But
like
yeah, it's like space version of that.
it's a space version of the Chicago mix. And by the way, the Chicago mist isn't that good. Just for the
It's
record,
so good. No,
I
it's
disagree.
so
I
good.
disagree. I'm a traditionalist with my popcorn. I love popcorn. You know, as a film aficionado, I don't. I love a traditional salty, buttery popcorn. Is all.
See, I'm the jerk though. I pick out all the cheddar ones
Oh,
and
of
I
course
leave
you
all the
do.
caramel ones.
I don't like, Dan
I'm a
is
perfect
co-host
match
on
for
our-
some people though, so there you go.
that works. So some people like the caramel. I was going to
Yeah.
say, my co-host Dan, who's going to be off the show for a little bit because he's over dealing with some personal stuff in Alberta, is he loves the caramel corn. He also always had caramel corn when he was a kid. I always thought it was way too sweet. Like I didn't like the combination of like the texture of the popcorn with the sweetness of the caramel. Also, not a big caramel person, so.
Well, Dan and I can hang out and I'll eat all
You guys will
the
share
cheddar
your,
ones. And you can have the
share
caramel
your
ones.
Chicago mix.
Yeah.
Okay.
It'll be perfect. But from my tally from this show though, when she's giving them like the running list of like all the money that they owe her, she says 20 cartons.
Yeah.
So they've done this at least 10 times if they each get a carton every time.
Yeah.
So does that mean we've missed like a bunch of missions in between the last episode?
It seems like, I think so. I guess that's implied because there's a moment where she says, "Oh, you're not going to need to get us a big score, like that droid thing, but like you totally bungled." But it's like that was last week, right? So it's implied that there was a bunch of missions between now, and I think a part of that is because we start this mission like right at the end of it, right? It's like, hey, we're catching up with them. They've done a bunch of this stuff. This is just the last little bit before we get to this part of the story.
I would say so.
Right.
From my tally, at least 10. So from how much?
Right. Your quick mental math.
What was it? Mentel mix?
Or it's just called Mentel mix.
Mentel mix. Sorry,
but it is based, obviously, named after Ord Mantell. I mean, duh. Right. Okay. So meanwhile, while this is all going on, a stranger in a cloak is watching them. Right.
As always in Star Wars.
As always, exactly. In the back of the bar. And I love Sid's line where, like, that's a strange-looking lizard. Because she's a strange-looking lizard.
Yeah, right.
So, I thought
she's
that was
literally
very fun.
A giant talking lizard.
So they go into the back to discuss payment, and they are shocked by how little they are paid. Sid says that they're lucky to even get that, considering the debt the debt that they owe. You just mentioned that, which is a surprise to them, and I think to us, because they're like, wait a second, this seems like a gotcha. And apparently they've been racking up a bill. Things like docking fees, rations, supplies, 20 cases of Mantell mix, right?
Yeah.
But again, it's one of those things where it's like, hey, this is a bit of a like bait and switch, right? Because we were under the impression that we were under your protection, quote unquote, if we did your jobs, not that we were, quote unquote, paying for it. You know?
Right. Yeah.
So what bugs me here, and I get that they're not experienced at this, that they're very new to the whole thing, but you're not going to push back on that at all.
Yeah.
You're just going to be like, okay, well, if you say so, because like it's like, in my opinion, that's bullshit. Like, no, I don't owe you any of this stuff. What are you docking fees? I'm docking here to give you your stuff. Like, no, well, that's like how I would have treated it.
Yeah, they're being charged almost like the room and board kind of thing to work for her, right? So, no, for sure. I think they just got a little bit blindsided there. Like, what do you mean we have a tab? I thought you were paying us.
Right, exactly. So this is what I was saying. Like, for Sid, for me, where she's always been a like mystery character, this is really sketchy stuff.
She's very seedy. Like, I think she's got she's very not neutral, but she's kind of like a gray character,
Yeah, I said shade. This is getting shadier and shadier. This deal gets worse all the time, So like, I just think that there's going to be another shoe to drop with Sid. That there's two possibilities. She either sells them out, or she grows a conscience. So take your bet on which one of the two that's going to happen. But considering we don't see the Bad Batch in anything else, I'm just going to lean towards that she sells them out.
Yeah,
I
I
think
would
that's what happened.
assume, well, something, at least some sort of falling out where, she asked them to do a job
It's too
and
far. Yeah, it's too
it's too
much.
far. Yeah. And
Mhm.
they're just like, okay, we're not doing this anymore. Like, whatever the protection is that you're giving us, we don't want it because we don't want to be associated with
Right.
terribleness. So
Right.
I
Yeah.
have a feeling that's what's going to happen at least.
That being said, I do like that. I do like Wrecker's like, put it on Sid's tab.
Yeah. It's just Wrecker racking up this huge tab.
Yeah, I like that. So uh Sid tells them that they're going to need a big score to even their debt. Apparently the droid data from last week would have sufficed, but now they'll need to do another job unless they want to quote unquote see her ugly side. Whatever that means. I do like, by the way,
Yeah.
text joke.
Yeah.
This isn't her ugly side. Yeah, a little more under your breath there, buddy.
Yeah, you got to be a little bit better with like the side comments.
Uncouth, yeah.
Yeah.
So this discussion is broken up by the sound of blaster fire. So the squad and them and Sid, rush out to see what's going on. And back in the bar, it turns out that our regulars, which I'm just calling them our regulars now, were harassing the person in the cloak for taking their seat.
This. Yeah. That bar is empty. There's there's nowhere else those two can sit.
Does this not remind you of
completely empty bar?
Does that remind you of like the Honda Baba thing from A New Hope, where like
that's
he doesn't like you, like that, like you know what I mean?
He's like, I'm sorry.
So I thought that was good, and so it turns out the cloaked figure was none other than Captain Rex, who has was, I guess, the one that the Martell sisters were talking to at the end of last week's episode. So not a long-lived mystery.
No, which makes sense to me. I had, that everything ties together nice and neat for that. It wasn't too big of a crazy plot reveal there. It's like, okay, yeah, like that. It makes a very good connection there. Makes sense. Right.
So for me, there's two possibilities here. Okay, that's the end of that whole Martell. What are the name? Martell.
I think they're
Martell
sisters. Martell. Yes.
That they're the last. This is the last of the Martell sisters for this season. And that it was just Rex that she was talking to, and then it's all kind of wrapped up there. Because remember, I was talking about last week, like, there seems some shadiness here, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes.
I still think there could be some shadiness. There could be another shoe to drop later, but probably not, because at the end of the episode, it turns out they just got caught by the Empire in another way, so it doesn't really matter. So probably not, I guess, but just something to think about. One thing I want to point out here is when the squad comes out and they're like, "What's going on out here?" and Rex hasn't revealed himself yet. Hunter looks so out of place. He doesn't look like he knows what he's doing. He like stands there with his gun like slightly kind of like not pointed at anybody.
Right.
Just kind of like I don't know if it's just like maybe the animators kind of like forgot to animate his face for a second or something. But he just looked like what was his plan? He just looks like he doesn't know whether he's supposed to, like, what am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to defend the bar? Am I supposed to I'm just protecting the squad? Like, I can take it as like he's just more confused than anything. I just thought it was a pretty funny. He had like a very slack-jawed look on his face.
Yeah, that's true. You're right about that. He just looked very like unsure, and it was you're right. Very kind of awkward facial expression.
Yeah, you're like, what
just
am
like,
I doing
huh?
here?
What's going on here?
Yeah, yeah. So I thought that was kind of funny, and it means nothing, but I just thought it was funny. So anyway. So it turns out it's Rex, and this is exciting. I mean, like I said, we knew Rex was going to come, or at least I did from the trailers. We knew Rex was going to appear in an episode, and by the way, the footage of Rex that we saw in the trailer is from this episode. So if he does appear again later, it'll be a complete surprise. Okay?
Gotcha.
And I like his cloak that he's got going here.
Yeah, me too.
It's just really very cool, and the cloak reveal, by the way, when he pulls the hood back, is classic Star Wars, right? Like anytime, like that's Obi-Wan, that's basically every Jedi, but you know what I mean.
So it's usually Jedis, actually, yes. Yeah. But yeah.
In the episode or the little YouTube video that I watch usually after the episode from Screen Rant, he's like, they're like showing a couple examples of different like hood reveals, and he's like, "There's like an episode 1, an episode 1 again, an episode 1 again," because it happens like a bunch of times in episode 1.
Right. Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's true. It's just very like it's the most what's the word?
Dramatic.
Dramatic way to reveal your face in Star Wars, and like no one knows who you are as long as you have a hood up.
That's right. Just kind of like how in the Marvel movies, as long as you have like a baseball cap and sunglasses, no one knows. You could be Captain America in a mall and no one will recognize you as long as you have a baseball cap. So it's the same idea.
Don't even get me started about Sidious and just him just having a hood up and no one could tell who he was. So
like he didn't have the most distinct chin in all the galaxy.
I was just like, okay, yeah, like he has the most distinctive like nose and bottom face you can ever see, and everyone's like, who is that?
Right, but I think the idea is not a lot of people see him.
Yeah, that's true. So I get it, but still.
Yeah, whatever. It's Superman and his glasses. It's the same dumb shit. We'll just buy it. It just works for the story. By the way, like Sid is like, this isn't a clone clubhouse, and she's all just grumpy. I do like that she kind of just steps back. We don't need more Sid in this episode. She's just like, whatever. I'm not taking any more strays.
Just walks away grumbling.
Yeah. So as the squad and Rex share a drink, Rex catches up on like the latest. Here, what's going on? Rex asks about Omega, but they're interrupted by Wrecker and Omega. And Omega is surprised that Wrecker likes Rex at all, considering that he's a reg, quote unquote.
Yes.
Right. And so Reg. Sorry, what? Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, just Wrecker's like immediate like big bear hug is so endearing. He's just oh, we like this one.
There's so many touching moments. I think cute. For me, I think this is a very emotionally effective episode.
Yes, for sure.
The groundwork has been laid for a lot of stuff. And obviously Order 66 is like a really good emotional well to draw from. There's like a million things you can always pull from. But this episode really, I think, does a nice job of kind of leveraging that, but not in I don't think it overstays its welcome in that way. It just uses the right notes at the right moments. And by the way, so when Rex introduces himself to Omega, so he takes a knee, which I think is a nice touch, something that he's clearly like, he has a little bit more experience dealing with younger people, having met Ahsoka, which was only like 12 or whatever. And so he takes the knee, kind of gets himself onto, her eye level, which is, I think, a really important thing to do when you're talking with someone, of that size.
Yeah, for sure.
And this introduction is great, and like, how do you know that I'm a Gen 1? He's like, I can tell by the wrinkles, the lines on your face, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like this like really endearing moment, which is cute for us, but like she doesn't really know what that means, that she looks old.
Yeah.
Right. But by the way, for the record, I don't think the animation style here does enough service to this line. Like, they look very similar, I think.
They do.
Rex does to the rest of the clones. So,
yeah. I don't know at what point their like age. I guess their age stops.
They stop
progressing faster once they hit Django's like target
basically
age,
once
right?
they hit like puberty. No, maybe not puberty. Once they hit like adulthood, they're like, now it's like regular.
Okay.
I think it's regular aging at that point. I think.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
So note here, I think, is when Rex takes that knee, the musical cue here is in my opinion, very reminiscent of the Force theme. There's a little bit of that in there, I think.
Okay.
Just pointing a little bit towards that. I think we all can see it coming that Omega's Force sensitive. I mean, come on, right? But I just think it's a really kind of nice touch. It feels to me very reminiscent of kind of that first time, a little more casual, a little bit more like intimate than the way that Rex and Ahsoka met for the first time. But it's like he's learned from that experience, right? A little bit more able to be understanding of younger children. So anyway, I really like that. And so at that moment, though, Wrecker gets another headache and asks for a med pack. The squad are mostly just annoyed by this, but things get, I think, really tense when Rex, steps in front of Omega and places his hand on his blaster. Now, I really love the little like cowboy-esque like
standoff.
It's not even a standoff. Like the way he kind of like moves his cloak aside and like puts his hand not on his gun, but like really close to it. It reminds me of like a duster in a Western. It's very
for
very
sure.
fun.
Where your hand's just like hovering over your gun, waiting for the draw.
And this standoff, I think, is nice because again, it just really we've been complaining for a while, right? That like, man, why is no one picking up on the fact that Wrecker keeps complaining about this headache. Like,
Yeah.
why is nobody mentioning this? This is so annoying, right? And it's like, and to the point where they were really driving it home, like maybe a few too many times, one might argue. Like every episode had a version of it seemed like.
Pretty much, yeah.
And some multiple,
Yeah,
And
I'm glad it was this episode that we finally dealt with it. So
yes, because like you can't let that continue through the entire
No.
season. Like it's just not going to work. So I just like that this kind of really diffuses a lot of things really quickly. So Tech picks up on what's going on, and he tries to diffuse the situation by telling Rex that he's worried about, if he's worried about the inhibitor chips, it's all right because they're, I think he says, deviant nature.
Yeah.
Causes them to be not functional.
I love it. It's just like, oh yeah, we're too badass and our chips don't work, so it's
yeah,
fine.
so don't worry about it. It's all good. Although he does say, except for Crosshair.
Yeah,
like just
and
this
it's
throwaway line.
So it doesn't mean they don't work.
Right. So this doesn't satisfy Rex, right? And at first he mentions that having those chips in their heads makes them a risk to everyone around them, including Omega, and we know that's true, right?
Well, he's got to have a little bit of PTSD, like.
Oh, you think?
As well, like
really fresh. Yeah.
He just witnessed an entire plane crash of all of his like men. And yeah, he just went through like basically the most horrible thing. So he's like, yeah, I'm not doing this again. We're fixing this.
Yeah, and it's not even that he necessarily wants to fix it. He's just saying like, though he does, it's just saying like, this is dangerous. Like you guys can't mess around with this, right? And he's really only going to meet a handful of clones that he's able to even have this conversation.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Right.
It's just like, this isn't something that you can just be like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Because he's seen how awful it actually can be.
Well, no, not only that, he's seen it firsthand. He experienced it. He went through it. And I think that just like really, like you said, that PTSD, it just really drives home how like you said, how dangerous it is and how serious of an issue it is.
Yes.
And it's just like he says, it's not something you can control, and he kind of says with shame, that he couldn't control it, and he's seen firsthand what those chips are, what happens when those chips are activated, right?
Even though he controlled it like the best out of anybody, but still, it was only able for like a few seconds that he was able to. Right.
But I mean, it is pretty impressive how quickly he was able to connect the dots between Order 66 and Fives and be able to communicate that. We don't really talk about that much, but like that is pretty clutch on his part. So he says here, he's like, I don't want to bury any more of my brothers. I think referencing, the final season, the final episode of Clone Wars, when he's literally, putting those. We see that shot of is it Jesse's helmet to kind of close off everything.
Yeah.
And so that's what he's referencing here, I think, and because. Again, that's what I said. This episode's laid a lot of groundwork, or it's leveraging a lot of groundwork that's already been laid, and just a little line like that is enough. You're like, I know exactly what you're talking about. That's really compelling, I also don't know if you noticed, but did you notice how Omega was kind of like eyeing up his blaster? Like she's like, am I gonna have to step in here? Is there something I'm gonna need to do?
Well, she can tell she's tense, right? Because she's kind of looking at Rex, being like, I don't really know you, and all of a sudden your hand's hovering over your gun around my friends, and that's making her nervous for sure.
Yeah. So the situation is diffused when Hunter agrees that they should have their chip removed and asks Rex for advice. I just like how Hunter's like, okay, you're right. How do we fix this? Right? And by the way, that being said, I don't love Rex's response, which is like, listen, I'll be in touch. It's a little bit like, this is really, really important. I'll call you in a week.
Yeah. Sit tight. With these murder chips, and I'll let you know.
Just think about it for a little while.
Yeah.
So anyway, what did you make of this kind of this opening scene? This kind of kicks everything off.
Like I said, I was really relieved to see that we're finally. I'm like, okay, good. We're gonna start dealing with the whole chips things, and we're not gonna have to see any more of like Wrecker like complaining about his head and no one paying attention. So I was really excited, obviously, to see Rex again and get everything moving. And I really enjoyed everything. There were some very sweet moments and some tense moments. So it was a really good kickoff to the episode for sure.
The episode's a roller coaster ride.
It is. It really is.
Emotionally. And like, I should mention, and I don't feel like I didn't do it service, seeing Rex again in this time period is really cool.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's just really exciting. And we'll talk about a little bit about why I think that's the case in just in like a little bit later when we get closer to the end of the episode. So we cut back to the ship, and they're in hyperspace, and Wrecker complains about his head, while also complaining that he doesn't like the idea of having their heads cut open, which is fair enough. And we learn that they're meeting Rex on Braca, which is the same planet we find Cal Kestis on from Jedi Fallen Order, which is the video game from a couple years back. It feels crazy that it's been a couple years already.
Has it really? Yeah, I guess. Hey?
Yeah. So at the beginning of that game, you kind of shimmy around and explore a couple of these kind of wrecked ships. This kind of ship, this graveyard that they call it in this episode. And that game starts approximately 3 years from the end of, from Order 66. So basically 3 years-ish from now.
Right,
in the show. So that's interesting. Cal's probably not on the planet yet, but, they mentioned the Scrapper Guild or whatever they're called. And, Cal's, that's who he's working for at the beginning of that game. So just a little bit of kind of connections here. And by the way, I think that the look of Braca here is a little bit. They went with like hey, we're gonna do a big kind of overhead shot, and it's gonna be just like the paint, what they do when they just do like large backgrounds, which is just basically a painting, like a matte painting. And then I don't think really the actual episode, like the visuals of this episode, are that interesting. They reuse the interior, a more decayed up interior of the Venator ship, which we saw. It has a lot of similarities, obviously, to the final episode of Clone Wars with similar beats. But I just think it's not the best looking episode. We are ultimately visiting a lot of the same places, right? We were at Sid's again. We're on the ship again. You know, we're inside of Venator again. Like these are things that they have, and I'm not gonna call the show cheap, but what I'm thinking is they're probably saving up for some really exciting things coming up, because we did see some new stuff even as early as last week. So not to begrudge too much, but I'm just saying that I don't think Braca looked very good.
No, I kind of got the impression too, like it's not really quite where it's at in Jedi Fallen Order yet. Like this is kind of the beginning. Like maybe they've just been using it. Like to me, it just looked like a big ship graveyard.
Yeah.
Like it didn't really look like it was established the way it is in Fallen Order. Like, it's not
Fallen
as busy.
It seems like they have more infrastructure built up.
Yeah, they have more people working. They have more stuff going on at all times, and so it just seemed like it's very new to me. Like they've been using it as a dump yard for a while, and maybe just now they're kind of starting to, scrap parts and use parts. I don't know, but it did just seem very like a big dump.
Yeah, but either way, it's a nice kind of connecting piece to that game, which is really the shows and otherwise haven't really had a lot of connections to that game, but maybe we'll see some more as we go.
Ooh, yeah.
Anyway, on the way, so they, blah 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 blah, they land, but on the way there, Tech is finishing the brain scan device he was working on, and the way that he's able to kind of refine the scanner is that he's able to use his Rex's brain scan as a baseline, which I think is actually kind of a quick throwaway line, but explains a lot.
That makes sense to me.
Yeah. We also learned that Omega does not have an inhibitor chip, which I think we already knew in some fashion.
I think we assumed that, that she didn't have one, because it doesn't make sense why she would need one when she's a small child. Right. I don't know.
Well, it's not more likely that she's just like her as a clone is very different from the soldiers, right? So there's
well, she wasn't commissioned by the Empire either, as far as I know. Well, as far as we are aware, anyways.
100%
so
not.
Yeah, I thought maybe they were going to go the route that she knew where they were in their brains, but it makes it the way that they did it made sense. So I liked that it wasn't too ridiculous.
By the way, I love how she says inhibitor chip. It's just such a inhibitor chip. It's very it's very fun. I don't know. Anyway, there's a quick line here where Hunter kind of reassures Wrecker. He's like, listen, if Rex is sure, we should trust him.
Yes, exactly.
Just throwaway line, but I liked it. So on Braca, they say, what is this place? It's a starship graveyard. So there you go. The squad finds Rex's beacon and lands their ship inside an old cruiser hangar. Rex's ship is an old B-Wing, likely the same ship he and Ahsoka used to escape the Jedi cruiser after Order 66. Probably. Just seems unlikely that what are the chances he's found a different Y wing? Sorry, not B wing. I say B wing, Y wing.
Yeah.
So I think anyway, that's interesting. Just like, hey, enough time has passed. He's still using the same ship because he had no resources after Order 66. What he's supposed to do?
Well, yeah,
still same ship. Yeah,
exactly.
Now, here's another thing. As they're about to walk out into the larger shipyard or graveyard, the musical cue here is really I find really interesting. So it's reminiscent of the music that played in Clone Wars when Ahsoka was on Mandalore right after they had defeated Maul's forces, and she's about to take a call. She's about to take a call with the Jedi Council.
Mm-hmm.
There's this ominous hum, this not mechanical sound, but I don't know. It's just unsettling what they something that they're doing there. This low bassy thing. It's very reminiscent of that. And because we're dealing with Order 66 stuff, and that was leading into Order 66, I think there's some logical connections there. I just really like that musical cue. I think it's really compelling. Okay, so the plan is to get aboard a Venator-class Jedi cruiser to use the medical bay to remove their chips, just like Rex did, right? It's not too simple, though. They need to stay hidden from the Scrapper Guild, who control the whole planet.
Yes.
Though they don't really show up again until the end of the episode.
Yeah.
On the way, Rex tells them that he was warned about the chips by Fives, right? And that he's referring to, of course, the situation in Clone Wars, was it season 6? With Tup, right? And his kind of early activation of the chip. And Rex is, kind of surprised to learn that the squad, the Bad Batch themselves, learned about the chips through Omega. She was the one who told them. She's like, well, seriously, the kid told you? Weird.
Yeah, I was like, how does she know? Yeah.
Right. So again, a little bit more hints. She's obviously, we already know that she's because she's been working with the Kaminoans, and she has more knowledge about that stuff. So that's
of course.
Yeah.
But to Rex, I'm sure he's wondering, what the fuck? Why does this kid know a bunchh of stuff? But yeah.
Right. There's just so many things that are kind of the mystery of Omega is constantly being unraveled.
Right.
Basically. So Omega is really impressed with the size of the ship, just kind of this child moment where wow, this is really big, and the rest of them are used to how big these things are.
Of course, yeah.
And he mentions that this is first off the line, a Jedi cruiser, and Wrecker makes a joke about how first off the line, just like you, eh, Rex?
Yeah.
I just again, these are small character moments, but they're always my kind of it's what I live and die for.
I like those because those are the same kind of things that real friends would take, those same sort of digs, right? So
yeah,
it's very normal and it seems very real.
Yeah, it's just naturalistic.
Yeah.
So meanwhile, Hunter notices that there's something in the water and tells Tech to stay above the water line, but only Tech for some reason. So as they make their way through the ship, they discuss how Rex got his chip out. He mentions he had help, referring obviously to Ahsoka. To cross a gap, they use a cable to shimmy across.
Just always.
There's always a gap.
At least one.
Yeah. Wrecker gets scared, and it's weird that they would why would they wait for him to go last?
I know. I was let the poor guy at least go in the middle of you.
Yeah, because in case something happens, you want to have people on both. I feel like you'd want to have people on both sides, but whatever. And Wrecker gets scared, but Omega, he's like, it's okay, just look at the cable or whatever. She convinces him to do it, and then halfway through, of course, because that's his luck, the line snaps and he falls down, and he's suspended over this pool. And the squad watches as this creature comes up underneath, and it turns out that this creature is none other than a Dianaga,
right?
Which is the same creature that tries to eat Luke in the trash compactor.
It's the garbage monster.
It's the garbage monster. It's the garbage monster.
The original garbage monster.
Yeah. And it's it's funny because the Dianaga has this massive Wikipedia entry. It's really long.
Really?
I think for a creature that has really had almost no.
I was going to say that you only see 2 parts of a tentacle and an eyeball in in the first time we see it, but
yeah. And I don't know. I don't remember if you're familiar with the novels, the from a certain point of view, which is like the whole idea of this book was that it's a bunch of short stories about all the side characters that don't get mentioned or talked about in A New Hope.
I actually got that book for my birthday. I haven't read it yet, though.
It's a great book. It's really, really good. I'd recommend the audiobook as well. There's some really great performances in there, especially the Obi-Wan scenes.
Oh, okay.
And there is a whole chapter / short story dedicated to the Dianoga from the trash compactor, from its point of view. And
like actually from its
from its point of view, because that's the whole thing. Is the point is that it's always the character. All these stories are told from the point of view of the character, right?
I like that. I'm excited to read it now.
And anyway, like if you take, I don't know if that's canon, but they've certainly incorporated some of those things in here that they're actually smarter than they look. They actually are sentient creatures. They have a society of some kind, but they do need to live in water. They can't dry out completely. They are. What do they describe it here? They're kind of androgynous in the sense that they can take on. I don't know if that's the right word. I think they call it while physically hermaphroditic.
Oh, hermaphroditic.
Hermaphroditic.
It involves in species who it can switch its
sex.
Its sex depending on what it needs, how it needs to reproduce.
Okay, so it's Dianoga could choose to identify as female, Diangus, whatever that means. The most common gender, or male. The mating process involved partners exchanging eggs with one another. So anyway, gross. But that is interesting. If you're wanting to learn more, there's a whole chapter about it. Apparently, they are sentient, and some even have the ability to tap into the Force in a light way. So
interesting.
There you go.
Good side
this
of the
one's
Force
obviously
or bad side of the Force.
It's hard to say. But I think what's interesting here, I mean, they're omnivorous, right? So they eat both plants and people. And they hail from the planet Vodran in the C-Clada cluster. I'm totally butchering all this stuff, but either way,
if you want to know where my brain is going right now, I'm laughing in my head about one of these things wielding a lightsaber and being a Jedi. So because you said they can tap into the Force.
Yeah, that's funny. But like, I guess like
my brain's doing,
what this one's a really big one. It looks like, and its mouth looks a lot. I think this is the most we've ever seen of it because we see its mouth this time, and it looks a lot like the Sarlacc.
Yeah, it looks like a water Sarlacc for sure.
Yeah,
that's exactly what I thought too. I was like, is that a water Sarlacc? Like, does it? I don't know, but I guess they're not related. So
yeah,
maybe
whatever. Who knows? Anyway, Wrecker ends up fighting it off, and as the squad tries to pull him up. Ultimately, they end up shooting it a bunch. It runs away. And Rex makes a comment about it makes you miss battling clankers, doesn't it? Which obviously is a fun callback to the Clone Wars. So thoughts on this kind of like journey through the shipyard here before we get to the kind of the meat of the episode?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most exciting part of it is obviously just that. Like everything else is kind of just, banter. I was looking for any little Easter eggs, but there wasn't really anything that stood out too much, anything cool that was in the wreckage. It was just like you said, it was a little not boring, but the scenery just wasn't that intricate, I guess. So.
No, and that's fine. Okay, so we'll get to the medical bay. They find a surgical pod and Echo boots it up. I don't know where they're getting the power from, but it doesn't matter. Wrecker
I thought the same thing, but like whatever.
It doesn't matter. Wrecker will be the first one, obviously, because he's experiencing the most symptoms. And there's this quick line about how like Tech is like, I don't consider this facility to be sterile, and he's like, would you prefer to use the facility on Camino?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, this'll do. And as they get set up, Wrecker's headache gets worse, and Omega talks to Hunter and Rex. This is a really touching scene. She's worried that if something goes wrong, she'll be left alone. But ultimately, she's reassured, that, and Hunter says like, hey, don't worry, you're stuck with us for the long run.
Yeah.
But I like the way she's kind of like, hey, this is dangerous. Like she's trying to frame it in like a logical way, but ultimately it's just an emotional response,
For sure. Yeah, she's definitely scared, and like, to her it's like, okay, you're just gonna do brain surgery in this old this medical bay. Yeah.
Right. Just because it worked on Rex doesn't mean it's gonna work, right? Like, and by the way, Rex is there, and he's like, it's too dangerous to let them like to leave them in,
right?
And this whole exchange that she has with Hunter. Rex seems to kind of be like a little bit pleased. He's like, oh, this is nice. There's like a little nod there. As Tech finishes the scan, and he's scanning his head for the chip, Wrecker starts to get upset as the headache gets even worse. Rex, though, and there's this. So this is where I think the episode is really, really compelling. So they're having this. They're showing us what Wrecker's going through. He's like, his head is hurting. There's like, get this stuff away from me, all this stuff. But meanwhile, like not framed in traditional like, hey, Hunter and Rex are having a conversation, right? But it's off. It's a little bit off of the camera. We're really staying with Wrecker as Rex does stuff like mention Order 66 out loud, and and talks about how like he was really lucky, and oh, by the way, like, you know, and Hunter's like, yeah, we didn't really know what was going on when the Jedi make it, dropping these kind of like these like really trigger words,
yeah,
and like we didn't know why they were attacking the Jedi, though we saved the Padawan, like all these kind of things. And obviously what I think is interesting here, and just aside, is that he's talking about Kanan, someone he'll eventually meet, Rex will, and become friends with. Which is nice.
That's true.
And he says like, oh, you know, you're lucky because there was not a lot of clones that are immune to Order 66. Is he talking about other people? Does he know other clones that were immune, or like what do you think? I mean, what I thought was interesting is that like what's his name, who we met on that planet a couple weeks ago with his wife and kids. Cut, right. Why wasn't he susceptible to Order 66? Did he have the chip removed? How did he know about it?
I think because he didn't have any sort of like direct comms, right? So he never would have heard the term activate Order 66, because I think they need to hear it. So the whole thing is like, you know, the Emperor
Rex is just throwing these trigger words around. Rex is just throwing these trigger words around. So like, we're lucky that he didn't accidentally activate Kix. You know,
yes.
That's just we won't think about that too much, but it's interesting that he's thinking about there is others, and I wonder who those will be. We know that obviously we know about Wolf, we know about Gregor.
Wolf and Gregor. Yeah, right. I'm not too sure if maybe Rex is in contact with them yet or not, but yeah.
But the thing about Wolf, which is interesting to me, is that I think Wolf went through with it entirely.
Yeah,
because
probably.
he seems the most kind of like shook up by the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that Wolf's squad, like we see his specific squad kill his Jedi in Revenge of the Sith. So just saying, you know, he probably wasn't immune, you know. So this creepy music returns, that same musical cue from earlier, and Hunter mentions to Rex that he was at least able to like help the Padawan and Collar, yada yada. And just as this stuff is happening, Tech is about to provide a sedative when the music cuts out entirely. And I just love the way that they did this. It's just very dramatic. And he starts choking Tech. His kind of eyelids, his eye pupils dilate, and he says, you're all in direct violation of Order 66, right? And then shit gets real, right? And this is like where things really get intense. So
super tense.
He starts shooting all like towards all of them, but they're worried he's going to destroy the equipment, which I thought was like an interesting like, oh, that's a really smart thing to think about in this kind of like high tense situation, right? So they need to create a distraction so that they can draw him out of the room where all the equipment is in, right? So Hunter uses this like canister. And he uses it like a couple times, to be honest. He uses a canister that I thought for sure was explosive. Like when they're like, "Oh no, he's going to destroy the equipment." They look at these canisters, and I'm like, "Oh no, he's going to blow it all up." Right? That's what I thought. And it turns out no, it's just gas. And so he uses it to create a distraction. Rex, Hunter, and Echo, and Omega make a break for it. Tech is just unconscious, so they're just going to hope he doesn't have to worry about that for now. And Rex tries to stun him in the hall. I really like this kind of brief fight scene because it just shows how much stronger Wrecker really is.
Yeah, and I think they did that on purpose too, because it was like, okay, which one can we have go rogue? That's that's going to be harder to take down.
The scariest one,
because he's literally a juggernaut. Like he's just
right. So Rex tries to stun him in the hall, and Hunter throws a knife at him, which I thought was a really really aggressive, but really it's his only move. So, and Echo really doesn't do much. She tries, and then he gets immediately thrown off.
I mean, yeah,
and
what's he
at
gonna
Rex.
do?
Yeah. Hunter takes him on one-on-one, but isn't much of a match for him as Wrecker starts
No.
choking him out and telling him that all clones in violation of Order 66 are to be terminated. What a, we've all heard these lines before. Classic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
To save Hunter's life, Omega uses Wrecker's SMG and fires a warning shot. She then runs, but she's chased by Wrecker. She escapes under a door and hides behind a piece of metal. There's a tense, I think, very horror-inspired scene as Wrecker works his way through the room, right, lifting the door. But by the way, reminiscent of what we saw in that in the Clone Wars finale when the clones were lifting up the door, right?
Right. Yeah.
So very similar to that. So he's lifting up the door. He comes in there, and there's the like bait and switch again. The idea like he pulls the thing away, and it's just a rat or whatever, some dumb thing. And turns out she's hiding somewhere else, but she's got the gun. And by the way, the gun looks so big in her hands.
It looks huge in her hands,
and it looks so tiny in Wrecker's hands. Like it's why I always thought it was like so. What a drastic like perspective. I just think it's really cool. And so eventually he finds her, and as she crawls away, she's still holding the SMG. He tells her that she's guilty of treason, and she tries to reason with him, but before she can pull the trigger, he grabs the blaster, and despite her pleas that don't, you're my friend.
Yeah.
He looks like he's gonna go through with it. It really like.
It does. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think he would 100% would have. And just about he's about to pull the trigger, the last second is stunned by Rex. And Rex, by the way, looks like he's like, holy shit, that was really close. Like,
yeah. That whole moment was so intense, and it was just heartbreaking because you can just see like her heart's breaking. Like she's like pointing this blaster at him, and she's like, I don't want to hurt you, and she can't. Like he's still coming for her, and he's basically going to kill her, and she can't even like save herself because she just like loves him too much, right? So it's so sad.
Yeah, and like there's this in that Screen Rant video, they mentioned that like, hey, one of the worst things that can happen to a kid is for the people that they trust to betray them or to turn on them. It's like the scariest shit that could happen. And it's like this is really, I think this is a very effective scene. Like it's just really scary, it's really intense, and what it does is really it drives your blood pressure right through the roof for them to really drive home some really touching stuff, which happens next. So
well, and I just feel like her and Wrecker have such a different bond too.
Right.
Like they are like best buddies. Like they're just like they're usually the two hanging out like we've seen. Like he makes her this cute little room and shares his teddy bear with her, and they go get popcorn together. Like they have this very adorable, innocent bond of like just two cute little best friends.
Yeah, because ultimately he's still very much tapped into that inner childhood. Right?
Yeah,
he's not a by the numbers soldier, right?
Yeah.
So back in the medical bay, Wrecker is in a surgical pod while the rest of the squad wait impatiently. But fortunately, it seems like the procedure is a success, and Omega tries to wake him up. She's worried. Rex suggests that Hunter and take her topside for some air while they wait, but she won't go, promising to stay until he wakes up. Now this is where the first bit of tears start coming from me. I'm like, oh, God, that's sad. That's really touching. And they all decide to wait, right? Like, okay, fine. If you're waiting, we'll all wait.
Yeah.
And it looks like some time passed. They're all napping when Wrecker wakes back up, and he's like, "Oh, what's with the long face?"
Yeah.
And she's really happy to see that he's back on his feet. And we kind of do a quick cut, and the rest of the squad get their chips out. And then here's the second bit of waterworks here when Wrecker kind of takes a moment and apologizes for what he did. He said, I did I tried as hard as I could to control it, but he couldn't. Right. And it's just really breaks your heart.
It does. I was even thinking about how awful he must feel. Even as he was trying to fight his own mind and he couldn't, and he was just pointing a gun at a little girl and his buddy. I'm sure it's just heartbreaking for him.
Yeah. He'll probably this is a traumatic moment for both of them,
Oh yeah. I'm sure he's going to be bummed for a couple days.
if the worst is that he's just bummed for a couple days,
No, you know what I mean. I'm just like, I'm sure he's
Yeah.
just gonna feel so guilty, and we might see him moping around for the next little
Yeah.
while, just like feeling bad because
Yeah.
poor
What?
Wrecker.
Yeah, and I like that she's gonna kind of break the tension. She forgives him,
Yeah,
and
of
like
course.
here's some Mentel mix I've been saving.
Oh my
You don't
god,
want
yeah, she just has it in her pocket. It was
to.
so cute. They're just
Yeah.
munching away. Oh, adorable.
We can't break tradition, is what she says. I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. This is just like what a beautiful they don't linger on this. It doesn't
No.
overstay its welcome, and it's just, hey, this is the trauma of Order 66. Here's what that can cause, and here's an example of how people can deal with it. And it's just a very human moment, and it's Wrecker's he's always been the one that's kind of been the most quote unquote human, right? Like
Yes.
touching into his feelings and likes to party and whatever, right?
Yeah.
Big hugs. So I just think it's really, really, really well executed. This is kind of in my opinion, is like the most you can ask for when you're talking about like how can you keep mining this well. This is how you can do it. It's really, I think, brilliantly done, well executed.
Yes, definitely.
Any other thoughts on this whole sequence in the medical bay?
No, other than the fact that I was a little bit worried that maybe Wrecker was gonna die here. Like I
Right.
had, I was pretty sure he wasn't, but I was thinking like, okay, maybe this is gonna be like that traumatic point for the group where they have to decide if if they can't stop him and get the chip out, like what are they gonna do? So I'm happy that didn't happen. So it's good to see that they were able to stun him and get the chips out and everything. So yeah, I was a little worried for whether they're going to keep Wrecker around or not, but I'm glad they did.
Yeah, I'm glad too. I mean, ultimately, what I think makes this scene so compelling is that the stakes are very real. In the Clone Wars, the stakes were never that high because we always knew Anakin was going to get out of it. I mean, they used Ahsoka as a tool because we didn't know what her fate, so therefore she could die at any time. But I just don't think, because of all the trappings around it, the stakes were never really felt that high.
No. But yeah, you're right. This is very different. Like we don't know. The Bad
anyone
Batch,
could die.
They could
literally anyone.
Exactly. They could die. They could all die. They could all get wiped out. Like there's
Yeah.
so many things that can happen with this. So yeah, there are much higher stakes in this series because we really don't know about any of these characters going forward.
Yeah, and I think, well, except for Rex, right?
Well,
and
Rex,
like
yes,
ultimately, like I think that makes this show so much better.
But here's the thing, and here's a little bit of a theory that I have, and I don't know if it matters or not that it matters, but you know what I mean. So eventually, Rex is not fighting for the rebellion
thank you
anymore.
for bringing this up.
So it's like, what happens that makes him go, I can't do this anymore, and that he just like goes off and starts hunting worms in a desert. So it's like, does he work with the Bad Batch for a while? Does he see these guys just get annihilated or something, So it's like, what breaks him to the point where he goes out in the desert and says, I can't fight right now, at least for a little bit, right?
Yeah, to me, that's the next like most compelling thing that can happen. Like I want to know, that's the mystery that I really want to understand. Like,
yes, me too.
What breaks Rex?
Yeah.
Right? He's unflappable. What breaks him? And I've been gearing up. I've been preparing myself emotionally, going through the motions of like, this show is going to end in tragedy. It's not going to be a nice, fun time.
I have a feeling too. Yeah.
So
like we said, the stakes are very high.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that. I'm totally okay with that. But I just like I love that the show is not only smart enough, but is also willing to drop hints that like, hey, Rex is in the fight right now, right? Yeah. We find that out right in the next scene. But we also know that next time we pick up with Rex, in the timeline, as far as we know, he's retired. Why? Right? Like why? So I want like that's really what I want to know now, right?
Yeah,
and of course, obviously, I want to know what happens with the Bad Batch and all that stuff. But are those connected, or is there other stories that need to be told there? I don't know, but either way, this episode does so much work now to prepare you for these things. It removes the chips, by the way, which is always this sword hanging over their heads, like, oh, if any of them are captured, those chips could be reactivated and other bad guys again. That's now been taken off the table, right? which is but for those people who are like, ooh, there's too many filler episodes. This is not one of
No,
them.
absolutely not.
And this drives the plot forward in leaps and bounds.
Yes, I would say so.
And it sets up something that's really, really exciting, which is that now they're going to face off against Crosshair again, and without there being the possibility of being kind of turned, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
I just think this sets up for such really interesting things. And obviously we know that the Empire's we're probably going to deal with Crosshair. We thought maybe Crosshair this week, maybe next week now is my thinking. Just because we know kind of what we see here is that the Scrapper Guild are like, contact the Empire, right? That's what we land on.
Right, yeah.
So
exactly. So I think we're getting to the point now where it's like they have a way that they could potentially help Crosshair. So I do think that's in the back of their minds, like, hey, it's not his fault. If we can just get him, maybe they can help him, right? So there is that kind of opening there for that, or at least in their minds it can be. So I think that's what we're going to see next, because we've tidied up at least this part of the plot with their chips. So now we can move on to more stuff with Fennec and more stuff with Crosshair and other storylines.
Yeah, and Omega, obviously, what's her deal?
Yeah, exactly.
So there is this brief scene at the end. Rex is outside. It's nighttime now. He's speaking on his communicator to someone. We don't know who. That's another compelling mystery here. I don't know if that'll, we probably will. It seems like this show is really kind of like, we'll set you up a mystery, but it's not going to last that long. So
yeah,
he's talking to someone here about meeting at a rendezvous at the next rotation. For those who don't know, the next rotation is just another word for saying tomorrow.
Yeah.
By the end of tomorrow, the next day. Who's he talking to? Guesses. What do you think?
I think it could very easily be the Martell sisters again, because that's who his contact was before. Maybe Ahsoka, but I do feel like they're kind of separate right now. I don't really know if we're going to see her in this series.
I would be surprised.
I would be surprised if we see her too. So my biggest guess would just be probably the Martell sisters. Just being like, okay, cool, got your info, let's meet up. And maybe they're doing something else, or maybe, unless it's another member of the rebellion that is
there isn't much of
happening.
It's so early on.
It is. That's the thing. Like, no one's
isn't really a rebellion in that sense right now. What Mon Mothma and Bail Organa are doing is very much like political right now. They're trying to fight a fight in the Senate, which we know doesn't go anywhere. Anything,
I don't think they're really. Yeah, they're not really in it yet. The only other people are is like Saw Gerrera, unless
Yeah.
But I don't know how Rex would have his contact info though. So
well, they know each other.
Yeah.
Right. I by the way, earlier when he's like, "I'll be in touch," like, how?
Yeah.
Like what phone number are you using? I don't really whatever. I don't care about that stuff. But I think that's a great point. With Saw, I think it's more because we've already met him this season. It seems more likely.
Mm-hmm.
Bail Organa is, I think, the most probably active in recruiting and setting up an active rebellion right now. But I don't think that he's talking to Rex. They have no relation.
No.
They don't really have a relationship. Why would they?
No, I don't think Rex would know that he's someone he can go to and talk to at this point. So
because by the way, Bail Organa it's probably public knowledge that he was at the Jedi Temple the night of the quote unquote rebellion or whatever.
Yes.
So yeah. Anyway, I don't know. That's another really interesting mystery. Who's he talking to? Because he mentions there's others involved in the fight, right? I don't think he's just talking about the Martell sisters.
I mean, unless he's talking to maybe he's already connected with Wolf and Gregor, so maybe they're already
I don't know,
hanging out and doing stuff. But
maybe I don't But what are 3 clones gonna? What's 2 clones and a crazy clone gonna do?
Yeah.
So, anyway, Hunter arrives and he remarks that he's not surprised that Rex is still in the fight. And I noted here, and you already brought it up, which is that he was retired. I just think that's such a compelling idea. Yeah. Rex says that their squad would be a great asset in the fight, but Hunter tells them that he has to do what's best for his squad and that their priorities have changed. Mm-hmm. But he doesn't really know what that means yet. Rex is fine with that. He's fair enough. I think kind of noting the presence of Omega makes a difference, right?
Definitely, yeah.
There's this kind of... You get the impression that he's really at this point, he's just trying to keep his squad alive and protect Omega. That's really all he's trying to do.
Yeah. I think
right?
I think maybe they're even especially a little hesitant to join this new rebellion because it is very new, very dangerous to be starting this rebellion. And there's
Right.
not a lot of people yet, and he's like, I can't bring this child into a new
Exactly.
rebellion,
Well,
right?
not
Like
only that,
it's yeah.
he I don't think the Bad Batch ever felt that connected to the Republic,
No, I don't think they
right?
did either. So they're kind of like, we're kind of okay doing our own thing right now. And, maybe he's thinking like, maybe we can get Crosshair back and then we can kind of reevaluate what we want to do. And they just
Hmm.
got some other stuff they got to clean up first before they can think about joining a rebellion
Right. I mean, yeah.
because
I
they're still
totally
being
understand his
hunted.
perspective. It's one of these things where, like, yeah, they are still being hunted too. That's another thing.
Hmm.
Like, that would definitely bring heat to a
Yes.
burgeoning rebellion that doesn't need it
Yeah.
right now, right? So, like, I totally get where they're coming from. I like this, like, hey, stay out of trouble. And by the way, I like Rex. By the way, he's like, take care, trooper. He's talking to Hunter, kind of
Hmm.
like pulling rank here.
Yeah.
And even Rex is like, guys, like, calls him captain, right? And how
Yeah.
often
Oh,
do you
yeah.
hear Rex called captain? Not often.
Right. Yeah.
He says, if you're ever in a bind, you know how to reach us. Now, I think that's a cue. Like, that's a cue. We will see them. We will see Rex
Yes.
again
I think so too.
this season. Yeah. Probably at the kind of the climax, and you're probably right that that's probably going to be what sends him into retirement.
It's got to be something. Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Anyway, like, cut to the Scrapper Guild. They're looking at them with their quad knocks, and they talk to his partners and talk to the call the Empire. By the way, Rex walks off into the mist here. What a danger! He's like walking. He can't see anything. He's gonna slip and fall and die. Like, just from. It's very, like I said, dramatic, but
Yeah.
unsafe. It's fine. I'm sure his visor can help him see.
Yeah, he's got the fancy clone visor.
Yeah. So that's it. That's episode 7. I thought it was chef's kiss. Great.
Yeah,
Great.
me too.
Great episode.
I really
Final thoughts
enjoyed it
from you.
too. Yeah, no, it was incredible. Like I just think it gave us a whirlwind of emotions.
Right.
There's really good. There's sweet moments, laughing moments. Like they're very very tense moments. Like I
Scary.
said, terrifying. Yeah, there was moments where I wasn't too sure about Wrecker's fate. And then it was nice to see this whole Wreck Chips storyline get tied up, and then now we can move on to something else. So now we get to see more of maybe Fennec coming back in because maybe we'll see if she's working for the Empire or not. Because now we know that these scrappers have contacted the Empire. So if she shows up all of a sudden, then maybe we'll know that that's who hired her.
I think I'm still on the side that she's working for the Kaminoans.
I think so too. But yeah, so they would probably know too. So we'll see. I think there might be like a nice like fun scene coming up.
A three-way fight.
Yes,
yeah.
Some kind of three-way fight between Crosshair and Fennec and the Batch.
Do you think that? Don't call him that. Do you think that? Do you think that Crosshair is going to be redeemed? What's your thoughts on that?
I think it's going to be difficult. I feel like he will be, but I think we kind of talked about this before. I think it's going to be in like a sacrificing way. I can see him being redeemed, but it's either not going to go well or he's going to end up, he's redeemed for a short while and then he ends up dead. I don't think we see Crosshair.
He doesn't join up with the team again.
I don't think we see him joining up. And if he does join up with the team, I don't see him joining up with the team for good. Yes. I think it might be a short-lived type scenario, but
right.
Yeah, I think there is going to be some sort of tragedy involving him for sure.
Agreed.
But like I said, I think this was a really good episode. It wrapped things up really nice and neat, and then now we can move on to other things. So
yeah, this I think is great. A really clean delineating line between the first arc of this 3-part story that is this first season of Bad Batch, or maybe the only season. We introduced the clones and the issue with their chips, and now we've resolved the chip issue.
Yes.
So that's
and
now been
now we have
right
Rex
up.
back. So and we see more Rex. So I'm always happy.
You can never complain about having Rex involved.
Yeah.
So now we're on to phase. What's the second act? Probably understanding the importance of Omega, wrapping up the Crosshair situation. And then who knows what the third act will carry, but probably tragedy, like you said.
Yeah, most likely.
Okay, well, speaking of tragedy, it's a tragedy that we need to wrap up here. And you can follow us on Twitter at Tower Babblecast, Facebook.com/Tower Babblecast. If you have any thoughts or comments, questions, about the show, send it over to towerofbabelpodcast@gmail.com. We're happy to listen and read them on the air. And we'll be back next week with Season 1, Episode 8, and we'll talk to you then.